Hello, this is Steve from SDRplay, and in today's video I am delighted to introduce you to SDRconnect Preview 5. In this new release, we've got a number of new features, as you can see here on the slide. We have a narrow FM low cut filter, which will appeal to those of you doing 2 meters, trying to get rid of CTSS tones and so on. We have included now a PPM calibration and correction scheme. We now have configurable audio AGC. We have introduced both wideband and narrowband noise blankers, custom filter presets, and we've considerably improved the way windows are handled when you want to drag them out and float them or dock them together. And then finally, we've actually made some changes to the Raspberry Pi service to make it easier for you to either run the service automatically or disable it. But first up, let's go and download the software. It's the same as it has been on previous versions, so just point your browser to sdrplay.com/sdrconnect, scroll to the bottom of the page, and then click on the appropriate button for the operating system you're using. I would like to mention I'm expecting to follow this up shortly with a couple of videos. We seem to have some relatively new users to both Linux and to the Raspberry Pi who had some difficulty in actually installing the software once they downloaded it. So I'm trying to do a quick summary of how to do that, especially if, like me, you're a point-and-click user. Anyway, once you've downloaded and installed the software, let's start looking at the new features in this version of SDRconnect. As is often the case when trying to make a video, the 2 meter band is extremely quiet right now. But what I wanted to show you is on the audio tab down here, we now, in addition to the AM low cut and the single sideband low cut filters, we now have a narrow FM low cut filter, so you can use the slider to adjust the low cutoff frequency, which will be extremely useful for getting rid of CTSS tones. Switching gears for a moment to the Raspberry Pi, I'm tuned to the time signal WWV at 10 megahertz. And if we go to the hardware device settings, we'll notice at the bottom there is now a window for PPM correction. And you can type in your correction there if you wish, but there is also a way to calculate the correction automatically. So if we go over to the mode and change to synchronous AM, now when we go back and look at the PPM correction, the little calibration button is active, so we can click on that and just leave it to cook for a few seconds. And now it comes back with the correction, in this case minus 0.027. So we now have calibration built in. You can either use the automatic calibration routine by selecting synchronous AM, or you can manually put in your own correction, perhaps if you're using a GPS reference connected externally, if your RSP allows for that. In the sidebar of SDRconnect, we have a drop-down for AGC and squelch. And here we can turn on the audio AGC, and we have a choice of 3 profiles. And we can adjust the settings for each of these profiles by selecting a tab in the lower right, which gives us attack, hold, and release settings for fast, medium, and slow AGC corresponding to the profile we select in the sidebar. Both wideband and narrowband noise blankers have now been included in SDRconnect. They function much the same way as the noise blanking in SDR Uno. To get to the wideband noise blanker, drop down the AGC squelch drop down, and you will see a toggle for the noise blanker and then an adjustment slider where you can find the sweet spot for noise blanking. The narrow band noise blanker, on the other hand, is available from the aux SP by clicking on the little icon at the top. You can turn on the noise blanker and adjust the threshold accordingly up there. So here's a summary of the commands for the noise blankers, and I'm going to call upon my colleague John Hudson in the UK to give you a quick demo of how the wideband noise blanker works.
Looking now at the wideband noise blanker, which you can find in the AGC Squelch drop-down. There it is, wideband noise blanker. And that's ideal in the case where you have some kind of wideband noise problem that is across the spectrum. And you can see here every 10 kilohertz or so there's this interference pretty severe. And the way the wideband noise blanker deals with it is by setting the threshold such that the blanker is able to eliminate the repeated noise that's not part of the signal that you want. And so if you've really got to find that sweet spot. Too far this way, nothing happens. Too far that way, it just suppresses everything. But there is a nice point. And I'll turn the sound up a bit here. So that's with no noise blanker. Finding the sweet spot.
Is that Everton 1, Fulham 1. Let's go to the Stonex Stadium. Saracens, Leicester Tigers and Chris Jones.
Full time, Saracens 29, Leicester 32 before...
There we are, just in time for the results.
Well, I guess I should apologize for the audio quality on that last clip. Seems like we need a better form of noise reduction. And I'd now like to introduce you to something that's all new for SDRconnect. The noise reduction feature is based on a totally different algorithm, and quite frankly, the results are spectacular. Again, here's John to give you a demo.
So let's have a look now at the noise reduction option under the audio panel.
Well, there's a lot of talk about it.
See noise reduction. We're on 40 meters here, and as you can hear, there's the background noise. It's quite a readable signal, but it has got that ongoing background noise, which can be reduced with the noise reduction filter. So we turn it on now.
That's good.
See the difference.
That's good, Tony, but I mean, verticals do tend to work well on 10 meters, don't they, Tony? So that's good then, you know, just a piece of wire. What does it mean? It's the same as a vertical.
So there it is with the noise reduction.
An aluminium vertical, really, isn't it?
And without.
Tony. So, very good. Yeah, sorry to hear about your cold and turning into flu and all that. So, yeah, there's a lot of that going around at the moment, Tony, isn't there? I know my daughter was coming down yesterday in actual.
I'm really enjoying this new feature, and I'm sure you will too. My other colleague Mike Ladd has done a video going into more detail on the noise reduction. There will be a link to that video in the description below. You're probably familiar with the filter presets that come up depending on which mode you select under the control settings. There is now a new option, you'll see it at the bottom here, custom, but in fact you don't actually need to select it. You can if you want, because anytime you go over to the auxiliary spectrum and drag the filter setting wider, you will see the actual value you chose shows up under filter presets, which is pretty cool. And you'll see it listed at the bottom there. So now every time you select the USB mode, it will select the 5.38K width unless you select one of the other presets. Now you can select one custom filter bandwidth for each mode. So for example, If I go to LSB, I have the option for custom, and so I can create a different custom filter bandwidth for LSB. What you cannot do is go to a different band and have a different custom filter preset. But that is not a big deal, and I'll show you why. For example, I'm operating now on 20 meters. And if I now save a profile, and I'm just going to call it 20 meters, you will see within the profile the filter bandwidth that we selected up here, 5.38K, appears in the profile. So now if I go to a different band, for example 60 meters, and I still see the same filter preset here, but I can change this to some different value. Let's go down to 2.68 in this case. And if I now save another profile, and I call this one 60 meters, you will see that now I have the new custom bandwidth, 2.675 hertz saved. So if I now go back to 20 meters, I'm back to the 5.38K bandwidth. So although I can only select one per mode here, by using profiles which now save the filter bandwidth, I am able to set up custom filter bandwidths for any band I care to use. Another useful addition to the capabilities of SDRconnect, I think. Yet another new feature in Preview 5 is hidden away in the Options drop-down in the sidebar. Down here we now see a switch for peak detection. When the peak detection is engaged, you will see some annotations appearing on the spectrum window. And again, I'm going to hand this over to John for a better demonstration.
So let's have a look now at the new peak detection facility, which is under Options. We're on the 49 meter broadcast band, and if you open up the Options panel, you'll see we have this new feature called peak detection, which when you turn it on will annotate the main spectrum window with the signal strength of the peaks of the signals. So we turn it on, and there you can see in dBms the signal strengths as they go up and down.
A fairly significant improvement in Preview 5 is the way windows are handled, allowing you to float windows, move them around, dock them to other windows, and so on. But first, for fellow Mac users using Sequoia, I know there was an issue in Preview 4 whereby the minimize button didn't actually work. In Preview 5 it does. It seems to be a combination of something going on in Sequoia and something going on in our UI kit. But for the time being, this is working nicely. Also, I should refer you to the release notes. Not all of what I'm going to show you here is working correctly in the Linux distributions. But anyway, without further ado, one of the things I've never really liked was having this frequency thing at the bottom here, because you tend to come up with a lot of frequencies, so it's really too narrow. And then if you add a second VRX, then the space problem becomes even worse. But what you can do is you can just drag this window up, and there's a target there, which I'll get back to in a moment. But if I just drag it somewhere arbitrarily, this window is now floating. And for my purposes, what I prefer to do is make it narrow, so I can just see the frequencies, and also tall. So that's kind of neat. You can put it anywhere you like. Now, the other thing you can do when you're dragging windows around is, I mentioned a target. And you'll see there's 5 areas there, and depending on which one you go to will determine on where the window will end up. So for example, I can either combine it with the top half of the screen, I can make it a sidebar off to the right, like so, or off to the left, or just superimpose it. If I superimpose it, it's just going to become a tabbed window. So now I have the primary spectrum and the frequencies as tabs, which is not particularly useful. You can also drag this thing away just by dragging the tab. So I can, again, float this back the way it was before. So there's a lot of flexibility here, and you don't have to just do it for the frequencies. Any of the windows are capable of being moved around. For example, the auxiliary spectrum, I can grab that and I can float that as well. If I wanted to, I can move it back on top of the audio spectrum. If I hit the target on the left there, I now have the auxiliary spectrum, then the audio spectrum. And again, I can just drag one of the tabs out, and now I've got the multiplex spectrum separate. And I can combine that with the others, so now I've got 2 tabs there. Same thing for these windows at the bottom. So I can, for example, drag the AGC window out and move it anywhere I like. The other thing you can do, if you so wish, is you can change the size of the main window, and then you can position some of the floating windows around the periphery. For example, the frequency window here, and I can put AGC down here, and anything else I want. I could bring the audio spectrum out as well. You have to drop it on the main window somewhere, then you can subsequently move it somewhere else. And then the other thing that's really interesting about this is if I now close the program and then reopen the program, the windows will be restored in both size and position to how they were before. And just one caveat again for Linux people, the windows do not remember the correct positions right now. Also, there is only one layout that you can save right now, so however you left the windows, next time you open the program, that's how they will reappear. I'm sure in future releases we'll have the ability to save multiple different layouts. The other thing is, if you get totally confused and you've got these windows all over the place, if you go to the Preferences window here, there is an option here, Layout Reset. And if I hit Reset, everything should go back to the default settings. And indeed, you'll see all my windows are back here now where they were, and the frequency manager is down here below. So have some fun playing around with this. You can come up with some very interesting combinations of layouts, and the functionality of this is much improved over previous releases, and I think you'll find it very interesting to play with. Now, just a few words about the Raspberry Pi installer, or Linux ARM64. The installer wording has been changed a little bit to make it a little more obvious what's going on. So you'll get to a point in the installer where you get to choose whether you want the server service to run automatically every time you restart or boot the Pi. You can select yes or no. If you change your mind later, just run the installer again and make a different decision next time. Well, that concludes a quick overview of all the new features in Preview 5. As you can see, there's a lot of new stuff that got packed in there. Necessarily, this coverage here was pretty brief, but I think it points you in the right direction for where you can go and try out the new features for yourself. I encourage you to download the software and give it a go and let us know what you think. And as always, there will be some links in the description below this video, and there is also a hard copy document you can download to prompt you as you work your way through the new features. As always, thank you very much for watching, and we hope to see you again soon. 73.